Hello, everyone. This is Professor Hamamoto, and it is January 18, year 2022, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Can you believe that the first month of the year is over, halfway over? And I believe here in the US we have the ritualistic Super Bowl. Is it this weekend? I don't know. I've been boycotting the Super Bowl for gosh, 20 years? Can't really remember. I thought it was interesting, however, that I don't know where I read this, but this one report says that there are more viewers watching the halftime show than the game itself. So I would suggest just get rid of the football players and just have one giant satanic ritual for the entire event. I'm kidding, of course, but it's interesting. I think people really understand we should give people credit for being able to understand that there's a lot going on there, and more people these days understand that we are in the thrall of sorcerers, media sorcerers, and certain celebrities, which today is going to be the topic once more. And I titled today's talk Sharon Stone and the Fall of the Compassion Industry. Yes, you've heard about compassion fatigue. Well, this talk goes much deeper than just the general disgust and the self-righteous posturing of all these different celebrities, whether it's Oprah Winfrey or whoever else is out there. The flavor of the month, right? We're all familiar with the syndrome, but I'm saying it's falling, it's collapsing, and it is an industry. They call it nonprofit, but believe me, there's hundreds of millions of dollars that move. Don't believe me. Read the literature itself from the business schools. There's hundreds of millions of dollars that circulate within the compassion industry, and there needs to be some forensic research in giving us hard and fast information. I'm giving you the cultural forensics of it. That is how people like Sharon Stone are used to launder reputations and to provide the screening, the semblance, let's say, of caring and humanitarian. Not to say that she's not honest in her intentions, but how that is exploited for cynical purposes, not just cynical purpose, it goes beyond cynicism. It's dangerous. It's politically dangerous for us to fall for this decade. It hasn't been around that long because the IRS had to be revamped in order for these people to perpetrate this colossal, not just financial, well, technically it's not financial fraud, it's all okay by the IRS, but to perpetrate a moral crime against the American people and the people of the world who are being leveraged, the people of the world, especially in the so-called third world, who are being leveraged on the behalf of these globalists who really want them dead. It's just the opposite of what I'm not saying Sharon Stone, she's a dupe on this, although I think she probably knows more than she's willing to admit. And that's why we're going to dig a little bit into this book. This is nothing that you're going to find on Wikipedia. That's my cardinal rule. Whatever's on Wikipedia, whether it's true or false, I do not do that on this talk. Right? That's other people's channels. I provide the cultural forensic analysis of works like this, and believe me, I found a lot. But I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush through this, even if I have to carry it over to the following Thursday. I'm going to explain in depth what I mean by this globalist celebrity charity circuit, 3C for short. You've heard of 5G? Well, there's 3Cs could be even deadlier. But before I begin, I would like to give a shout out to Piper Fogel. How are you today? And Corky Goss and Mr. Mrapes. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm glad to have you here live. Yeah, you're excited. I'm excited. Sion Kim, good vibes. He has plenty of good vibes. Michael Charlie, greetings today. And Kim Chatman Smith. Oh, you're from Melbourne, Australia. We stand strong with you, Miss Chatman Smith. We stand with you. We will pull out of this. And part of it is pulling the rug from under these compassion industrial complex people, right? It's like you've heard of the military industrial state. Well, the compassion industrial state is very much related to it because it's the military industrial state that creates the worldwide conditions for misery. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Marcia Ezel, well, if you can't join us now, hopefully you'll be able to watch the video of it. It'll be posted very shortly after we're done with the live stream. Ms. Nadia Martinez, hello, welcome. Glad that you're here. And Gonna Cry 96 Tears is in place. Yes, we can start now, okay? And another number, 5943. Yes, good to see you here. And Pluto is a planet and also a character from the Disney universe. And Detroit Dave Underdown. By the way, for those of you who are outside the US, the reason why I give him a nickname is because that's just sort of gangster type. Yeah, Minnesota Fats. Malcolm X, by the way, before he became Malcolm X, his name was Malcolm Little. He was known as, because he was a gambler, he was a sportsman, he was a pimp. Okay, he was yeah, I wouldn't say high level mouse. He was a street criminal, right? But his nickname was Detroit Red. That's Malcolm X now. Now you understand why I like gangsters. Not just because of that, but gangsters are very passionate and ironically very honest people, much more honest than these charity characters there who are stealing from people left and right and ask us to admire them for that. And Zoga Nostra Nostra, how are you? Good evening. Ayape, yes. Live chat all the way. Ramsi Rabi, yes. And Shouts 2014, Civilian Warrior. Yes, this is what we need. Rick Olson and Vec Mama. Hi there. Christopher Lee. Yes, I love those Hammer films produced in England, low budget horror films that are really telling us a lot about our world, our civilian world outside of which is more horrific than any Hammer film could ever portray. And Teresa 1008, Angelina Jolie. Ooh, yeah. She's the queen of compassion. And let's see if I'm missing your name. Siri, yes, cruelty purposes. Trap a skunk. Let's trap skunks today. How's that? Yeah, let's trap them. Without them getting their skunk juice on us. Athena, yes. Good evening. And porch sitters, yes. Dietrich Sheep, yes. Okay, well, you're curious? Well, hopefully your curiosity will be satisfied here today. And last but not least, Tyrone Sargent calling dialing in or hooking up through the great state of Louisiana where they abide by the Code Napoleon. All right, let me continue. I'm sorry if I'm missing your names, but let's dive in right here. Oh, I should tell you, first of all, I'll be having a return show with Manny Grossman. I don't know if it's going to be on my channel or in his. We're trying to figure that out right now, but I think it might be on this channel next week, sometime, either his or channel or my channel next week. Because believe me, and I don't mean to be cruel by teasing you, but he's come up with some new information with his incredible research that stems from the Maury Terry original investigation on the so-called Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, and related people. But so we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to be interjecting some of my own observations of, again, cultural forensics about the case, because as Manny Grossman and others, his helpers, his research assistant, but Manny's taking the lead on this, the point, it's much larger than David Berkowitz. And Maury Terry was pointing us in that direction. And from me, perhaps from beyond the grave, he still has a hand on this, but it's leading to much, much higher places, up to perhaps the upper reaches of the military-industrial complex itself, very much in the same way that the compassion industry is very much linked with the national security state itself. So that's going to be next week. Also, another author that everybody here in the live chat loves, and outside of the live chat as well, all over the world, not just in the US, but none other than the author Kirby Summers. Yes, we're going to be putting our heads together and she's going to be making a return visit. And again, I don't want to be mean by teasing you, but I said I would not really divulge any of the specifics because she sent me some material. Man, I thought, this is over 400 pages. Sorry, 400 pages. This book, it's Jeffrey Epstein, Predator Spy. Okay, so I just thought, well, she's laid it all out. What more can be said? But she sent me some additional material on Jeffrey Epstein, and man, she's uncovered a lot, and she's graciously going to be sharing it with you and me. We're going to get a look at this, maybe even before the book comes out. But she'll definitely have to do another volume just on the basis of this new thread that it's more than a thread, it's more like a rope that she's followed. And again, it leads all the way up to much, much higher than even the Clintons or whoever, all these people who are named in the little black book there. So that's coming, maybe as early as next week. It can't be a live stream, but there's a time zone difference so that we can't do a live stream. Maybe one day I'll be able to get her to do it, but that's evening for her out in on the East Coast, and she gets up really early. So I don't want to keep her, and she works very, very hard. I'm embarrassed. I feel like a slacker next to Kirby Summers, but anyway, you're going to be able to see her latest research and also my commentary. So let's dig in here. Let's dig in on Sharon Stone. And remember, I think you know this, but for those who are just watching for the first time and just think I'm into myself and trying to exploit the misery and the hurt of people, whether they be celebrities or just everyday people, that's not what I'm trying to do. And what I'm doing here just cannot be dismissed as morbid curiosity or simple sensationalism, because there's a lot of that going on now that the whole true crime genre has blown up on all these different platforms, but it's just sort of like just disgusting voyeurism. I won't mention any channels, but I've checked some of them out, and they have zero interest in the crime. All they know that is true crime is cool right now, and it dominates Netflix. It dominates publishing, and movies as well are based on a lot of true crime stories. So anyway, I want to restate that my chief motivation for writing about researching and lecturing, because I used to do this in the university, talk about true crime all the time. That was part of my teaching methodology, my pedagogy, if you want to call it that, is to talk about true crime. Because again, the specific case, whatever it might be, it could be about Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, it could be about so-called Son of Sam or the Sons of Sam. My whole approach and my whole reason for doing this is that these individual crimes are a microcosm of the larger state, the larger society out of which these crimes evolved. It's kind of like a hologram in a way. You look at the crime, and there you'll see the entire military-industrial complex, the universities, the so-called law enforcement. You'll see the court system in microcosm, and that's why I approach these with that sort of cultural forensic knowledge and understanding. And I think people here in the live chat and more people who are subscribing to this channel understand the uniqueness and the importance of it. It's not trivial. True crime is hardly trivial. It's not sensationalistic. You give me the true crime and I will give you the new world order. It's a peephole. Maybe that's not a good analogy. It's a mirror or a window into the deep state. It's a window into the new world order. And if you're of Gnostic inclinations, you've heard the formulation, as above, so below, right? Well, if you have a street level crime that may seem random, let's say the Son of Sam murders, and that's how the perpetrators hoped it would just be played off as just sort of a random one-off. But as below, so above, or as above, so below. It's a reflection of this larger complex of power that's always seems to be. I'll go further. I'll say it always is rooted in the occult. It's rooted in evil, Luciferian Satanism. Um, and we see this time and time again, so much so that it's more than a pattern. It's a bedrock reality that we're dealing with, as ugly as it is. And I know it's difficult for people to wrap their minds around it, because most of us are trained or raised or around goodness, around people who are not evil, just quite the opposite. They are good, hardworking, well-intentioned, loving people with faults and foibles as well, but they're good individuals. And certainly is true about Sharon Stone, the person, and her family. And she writes a lot in this book, autobiography. It was published 2021. It's fairly fresh. Uh, she writes a lot about her mother and father and the relationship that she has with them, but she goes back a couple of generations, at least to her grandparents, maybe her great grandparent generation. And it seems to be, I don't know if it's a coincidence or what, but she also comes from an Irish heritage. She's Irish American. And I've talked about the Pharaoh family, or not the Pharaoh, but the Margaret O'Sullivan family. Pharaoh was Welsh, I think. Um, I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with the law of averages. There were so many millions of Irish people that left the motherland to escape certain death, poverty, genocide, right? That's not me. That's what the scholars say, genocide. It's not just a potato famine. And you have Mr. Chris Fogarty, who is a layman, but he's written the great book about it, saying this whole potato famine deal is mythology. It was an all-out genocide, auto-genocide, because racially they're the same group. These are, white people, quote unquote white people. So the racial, the Black Lives Matter, if you want to look through history, race has really been secondary to it. That's more of a modern manifestation of a pattern of tribes going after tribes, trying to exterminate them. I mean, it's all through the Bible and other traditions as well, whether religious or not, where you talk about these exterminationist campaigns. But anyway, she comes from that deep background, and she has a sound, a strong understanding and appreciation of it. Otherwise, she wouldn't mention it. And epigenetically, she comes from that heritage, which probably accounts for the fact that she's so strong, and she's a fighter. She's feisty as all hell, and has survived all kinds. I'm not just talking about professional hardship, professional setbacks, because we all have them, right? I'm talking about physical setbacks. In fact, she opens this book. The first chapter is like she's in the hospital, the emergency room in San Francisco, not Hollywood, but in San Francisco. And I'll tell you why she's in the Bay Area in San Francisco in a moment. And she suffers from a brain hemorrhage. And she gets a misdiagnosis at first, and the problem doesn't seem to be going away. And the nurses or the staff might think, they know she's an actress. She was top celebrity, and this is in 1991, I believe. So they thought she might be play acting, a bit of his histrionic diva behavior. So I think one of her I think it might have been her father or somebody came in and said, "Hey, listen, it's not going well. I want you to check it out, see what's really going on." And they found out indeed that she had this massive hemorrhage. So she's strong. She's definitely strong. So let me, and the title again is "The Beauty of Living Twice," because she's reborn physically, but she also has experienced a rebirth spiritually, if you will, which we'll get to in a moment. By the way, you may think is strange, but this is one of the, I won't say joys, but one of the reasons why I do this type of research here, the cultural forensics, and that is that I come up with connections from the most unlikely source. It's kind of like the eureka effect, right? Eureka, I found it, and I'm really gratified when it comes from unexpected sources. Just as in this case, I didn't realize how deep this book was going to be, and it's very heavy, and in ways that Sharon Stone herself probably doesn't realize, which I'll get to before I end this talk. And I'll get to, I'll finish up the story in a moment what I'm referring to, but I will confess to you that I picked up this book primarily because I met, this is in the spring of 2020. There was a gathering of researchers, the charrettes. I think it was the maybe the third or fourth charrette that was hosted by the investigative journalist George Webb. You know who he is, right? And he was holding one down in La Jolla, and I'm up here in Northern California. La Jolla's in San Diego. It's about as far south as you can get before you're into Baja California, which is part of Mexico, right? It's way down there. So I flew down there and got to meet all the great people down there. And one of the people who was in attendance, and I won't give you his name, said that he wasn't bragging about it. Just I think George was teasing him all about it throughout for the charade. And but so anyway, we heard the story that he had been a roommate of Sharon Stone's before she hit the big time. When she moved to LA, she was a model. She was a fashion model, a television model. She had no problem getting representation from, I think it was Eileen Ford or Wilhelmina. She, one of the big ones. By the way, at that time, most of the modeling agencies, I think, maybe I'm just naive, they were legit, right? They weren't like Jean-Luc, whatever his name, the friend of Epstein. It wasn't that sleazy time. These were just, uh, I guess, managerial type deals where, people in the print media back then or television, hey, we need a person here to do this, hold up this product for a television advertisement or whatever, and then say, okay, we'll send one of our people down there. Okay, that was a modeling agency, but it's since turned into something else, right? From what I can tell, or for what we have learned, all of us have learned. We've done a lot of growing up in the past few years, wouldn't you say? So anyway, he was or still is a professional photographer, and he was already working doing product photography, fashion photography, headshots, whatever it called for. He did some videography, mostly it was photography. Really good guy, and I'm not going to give you his name. Some of you who were at the charrette will know who I'm referring to. Anyway, the story was going around that he was the roommate of Sharon Stone, and I think it was platonic or something. And the deal was is that she was rooming with him not just because of money. Neither she didn't have the big bucks back then because she comes from dirt. She was poor. She wasn't always Sharon Stone, the rich celebrity. Her parents were she grew up in Western Pennsylvania, rural area, small town. Everybody knew each other's business. And I think her father had to drive one way, 1 hour in order to get to his factory job. This is when there were still factory jobs available in the US. A hardworking guy. He worked on the swing shift, which meant swing shift means that you do an 8 to 5, and then for maybe a week or so, then you do the 8 to midnight, and then midnight to 8 o'clock. That swing, you go on. It's like a factory's open 24 hours, and so your body never really gets to adjust. You're always disoriented. But if you want to work, then and if you don't have the seniority, I guess, or maybe if you prefer it, you're going to work the swing. Anyway, the point is, he's a hardworking guy. So was her mother, who was a homemaker, but man, she worked hard, and she comes from hardship. And maybe before I finish the story about the celebrity photographer, I should tell you her mother was married at age 16. She got pregnant when she was only 16 years old. She didn't know anything about the facts of life, right? And this was like would be like my parents' generation. They didn't really talk about sex. There was no information. There's no internet, thank goodness. But you just had to learn the old-fashioned way on the street. Yet someone had to tell you, sometimes your parents would sit you down and tell you, we called them the facts of life. And by the way, my parents never told me the fact. They never had that talk with me, the facts of life. But we did have family life classes in junior high school. And I know a lot of people don't like them, but I learned a lot. It was an entire class devoted to, I guess you can call it sexuality, not about how to do it, but just basic human physiology. And I'll give the woman props right now, her proper respect. Sally Williams, she's in the history books, by the way. Sally Williams with the Orange County or Anaheim Union School District, I think it was called. She was the pioneer in what they called family or sex education. I know it has a bad name in conservative circles in particular, but the way, I'm a product of that curriculum, so I can attest that it was very useful to me, and there was nothing sleazy about it. Maybe today it's different, but back then it was incredible, and I'm very grateful for that the education I got in public school. But anyway, the point is that her mother didn't have that, and I'm giving you this backstory because it makes it more understandable why later on, it doesn't get until about the middle of the book where she talks about her own sexual abuse and on the side of her maternal grandfather, which would be her mother's father, right? Her mother. Well, wait a minute, I should step back. First of all, her mother, who was impregnated at age 16, was sent out for adoption. I can't remember the exact story, but I don't know if she was orphaned, but I think that she was born to a really poor family. So they had to put her up for adoption. And then she was brought into this home. This couple adopted her, and and this was not uncommon, by the way, in the earlier part of the 20th century. This was kind of late, but especially in America and all over the world. I mean, in Japan, it was not uncommon for daughters to be sold as a household servant, a slave, really outside the household for her family, for her servant. And that's what happened to her mother. She wasn't sold, but she was adopted. But she was, in essence, sort of like the second mother, the second housewife, did everything as a child. She was a child worker. And she never had a childhood. And then she gets pregnant at age 16. So, and a couple of years later, this is with her Sharon Stone's older brother. And a couple of years later, she comes along. And then she had a total of 4 children. I'm talking about Sharon Stone's mother. So she really never got to fulfill her human ambitions, and only knew toil and hardship throughout her life. And when you're a kid, you don't understand that. I'm sure everybody here can relate to that. You're a kid. You don't have any contact. You don't have any you don't have any life experience, right? Let alone harsh life experience. The same with Sharon Stone. She didn't realize, and there's a good ending about this, is that gradually she came into understanding why her mother was so tough, and her father as well, why they were so tough. They were non-affectionate. They were too busy. They laid down the law. They were very, very strict. She had a curfew, 10 o'clock. If she was 1 minute late, that curfew would be extended another week. I mean, on and on. And she doesn't say this with any resentment. She's just stating this story as part of her own upbringing and how, I don't know, in a way, I think she could thank her parents for that, because she was a very hard worker. And during her peak earning years of the 90s into the 2000s, she was making tons of movies. Like she never stopped working. It's it may seem glamorous, but it's a very, very strenuous, mentally, physically, and whatever outside type of work, promotional work you have to do. It's grueling, and it's no wonder that very few people are able to go through the profession with their faculties intact or otherwise, right? So anyway, this is the backstory of Sharon Stone's upbringing. And to finish up the story about the photographer, he talked about his time as the roommate of Sharon. Nothing sleazy, but she was using him, and this is according to him. It's not in the book. She was using him in order to ward off all the male suitors' attention. Right? He could play like her boyfriend. Oh, that's my boyfriend, so I'm not available to you. So he was kind of like a heterosexual beard, if you will, for her. And I don't think there was any romantic involvement that he at least he didn't tell us. So I came into this book with a very base, admittedly, motive and to see if it was in the book. I wanted to see he was mentioned, and of course she doesn't mention him by name, but I think I found some references to him just in passing, nothing major. So you made it in here. I'm not going to say your name. I think I'm not sure. And I also had another motive because a friend of mine, this is years ago, gosh, when was I think this was in the 90s when Sharon Stone, I mean, it was just Sharon Stone, Sharon Stone. I mean, she was huge. She was a megastar. You could hear nothing but Sharon Stone, her name, her image everywhere. And a friend of mine who's a bachelor, who taught at UCLA sociology, and a really ladies' man. And he was very excited because someone was going to set him up with Sharon Stone's younger sister on a date. So, so I wanted to say, well, what is her sister? And her sister does make it in this book. She's really seems like a wonderful person as well. I can't remember if my friend went on a date. So anyway, I was looking at it at a very low level type of expectation, and as I'll tell you in a moment, well, I've already explained her background is really hard and heavy as well. So, it's more than, in fact, she doesn't talk about any lovers. She doesn't talk about any boyfriends. And you know what? And I thought this was strange. Maybe you can help me understand this. She didn't even talk about her husband, Phil Bronstein, who was a high level newspaper exec. I think he was with the San Francisco Chronicle. And I remember that because this is sort of pre internet days. You had to read the magazines, newspapers, or watch television. And even then, there was nothing but Phil Bronstein and Sharon. Remember, she was big. So that's all. So this was like the romance of the century. But Sharon Stone in this book doesn't mention Bronstein until the very last page of the book. And this is in the acknowledgments section. So I was scratching my head. And by the way, when she had her brain hemorrhage, she was married. I looked at the calendar, the timeline. She would have been married to Bronstein, and she was in San Francisco. He was the executive. I mean, he was the executive editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. And yes, I know it's not the New York Times or the Chicago Tribune, but it's a major metropolitan newspaper, and he's the executive editor. By the way, I also learned, and this is really strange. I keep coming across people who have some sort of UC Davis background. And Phil Bronstein had gone to UC Davis as an undergraduate. He never graduated, but he went to UC Davis. And then I don't know. I have some thoughts about Bronstein. He's much more than, but I don't want to get off track here. He's much more than a newspaper executive. I think he has some sort of intelligence connection there and placed in a newspaper setting, right? We've heard that scenario more than once, but that's another story altogether. And maybe that's one of the reasons why he's not mentioned, even though they were married for what, 3 or 4, by Hollywood standards, 3 or 4 years is a long time to be married. But they were married when I think 2000 or 1998 or something, and they'd split by 2002, 2003, and divorced 2004. And I'm not doing Harvey Levin here for you, just to allude to that show, whatever it's called, right? I do watch it every once in a while. I mention it because one of the important points of her life was the fact that she did not get custody of her adoptive son. He got her, and so that really threw her. And she's like Sharon Stone, megastar, right? She did not get custody, and I want to know how that played out. It's not in the book, but how did the mother? Because typically, even in California, it almost always defaults to the mother, and she was, she had tons of money. She could have hired tutors, live-in help, and all that. It wasn't like she was indigent or anything. But Bronstein got the boy, the son. I'm not going to mention the name because he's really, well, he's important to the story, but to protect his privacy, and it's not about him. It's about this tug of war um, that she had with Bronstein, and she doesn't mention him by name in the divorce, and so there might be a prosaic meaning or a reason why Bronstein's name is never brought up until the very end, and she's thanking Bronstein. Thank you very much to my ex-husband, Phil Bronstein, and his wife so and so, and I go, oh, finally she mentions his name. I was waiting for it because I'm interested in him as a character as well, not just in relationship to her, but in general. He's a newspaper guy, an executive in the newspaper game. By the way, he's now the head of an organization called the Society or Foundation for Investigative Journalism, and that makes me wonder. And how about that group? What are they? Are they really about investigative journalism, or they're about investigative suppression of journalism? I don't know. So again, this reading takes me into further and further down the line in trying to understand how the New World Order operates at street level, right? Through cultural forensics. These are all of the questions and the inner dialogue I have going on while I'm sifting through this information. And by the way, I was trying to, the thought occurred to me, who reads this book? Who's the audience for these biographies? I think I'm an anomaly. I think it's mostly women. I think it's mostly women of a certain age, plus 40, and probably of the generation 50s, 60s, generation, not generation, decades I'm talking about, which is fine, but I don't think I'm the the target audience for this type of literature, which is fine because I also read V.C. Andrews because I'm into cultural forensics. I read anything that I need to understand, even if it's Dr. No by Ian Fleming, and I'll bring that into the discussion in a moment. I'm sorry if it's fragmented, but I'll tie it up for you in a nice, neat bow by the time this is all over. Oh, yeah. I hope it's not too stream of consciousness for you, but I posted a 90-second interior monologue by my hero, Robin Williams. Okay, that's what I try to emulate when I do this. I want to approach the level of Robin Williams' dissociative state. And by the way, he's very well prepared when he does his work. It seems like random and dissociative and spontaneous, but it's very, very tightly performed and put together, right? Because he's a professional. But I'll tie it in together by the time this is all over. Hopefully, we'll try. But anyway, check it out. It's a 90-second interior monologue by Robin Williams from Reality, What a Concept, released in 1998, is it? 97, 96? So it's late 90s. I had it written down there. And I'm studying that. I'm going to write about Robin Williams and his technique, and also about Joan Rivers, right, who I think was murdered after making an offhand, let's say, comment about the president of the United States at the time, Barack Hussein Obama, and his husband, Michelle Obama. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake. That was a slip. I don't want to be found with a belt around my neck hanging in my closet. So forgive me for the slip. No, you don't have to forgive me. It doesn't really matter anymore, does it? But it's a 90-second clip of Robin Williams. The routine is called "Come Into My Mind." It's about a comedian who's who's bombing during his set live. This is all the id, the superego, the moderator of your mind. You have these interior discussions with. He's doing this on stage in front of a live audience, and he does this routine about Nadia Comaneci. Remember the Romanian? I think she was 14-year-old gymnast. And by the way, I mentioned this because someone made a comment that there might have been hormones and growth hormone blockers involved. And I said, yeah, you know what? 76 Olympics, the East German growth hormones and all this experimental drugs were still happening, and they're still happening now. So maybe, yes, maybe Nadia Comaneci was one of the early experimental tests. That's what the Olympics are used for, by the way. They're used for a biological experimentation. I think this is what Hitler had in mind when he revived the modern Olympiad and held them in Berlin in 1936. Not just Hitler, by the way, but all the other eugenicists around the world, because eugenics then and now was the predominant medical model that all these scientists and medical professionals, whether they knew it consciously or not, were operating from, right? So anyway, away from Robin Williams for a moment for now. Check it out. It's 90 seconds of hilarity, which again goes very, very deep. As one of the commenters, Megan. So that's, I'm always astounded in a good way by some of the insights that you bring to the party, this inner dialogue here. So, okay, let's go into her. Yes, I talked about her health emergency, the brain hemorrhage. This is in September 2001. And the other reason why and this is on page 6, okay, it's just getting right early into the book. This is why I said, well, where's Phil Bronstein? He should be there at her side. They were married. And there's a phrase there that said Sharon Stone had moved from Hollywood to Northern California, specifically San Francisco, because I live in Northern California, right? And I live in Sacramento, which is like a world apart from San Francisco. It's in the region, but it's quite different. But I prefer it to San Francisco. San Francisco always made me feel creepy, even when I used to visit there with my parents. They would take us drive up usually, and I was very creeped out by it. I'm even more creeped out by San Francisco today, right now. And perhaps Phil Bronstein and Sharon Stone might have something to do with that creepiness. You know about Bohemian Grove, and the Bohemian Club is in San Francisco. Bohemian Grove is not, you just drive over the bridge and it doesn't take long and you're into that whole area. You got the East Bay, Oakland, Kaiser. It's just a very, very, you got the wine country up in Napa, that area, Sonoma. And you know, all the Project Chaos, all the hot spots, the free clinic. I've talked about them here in this show. San Francisco, and of course, south of San Francisco, you've got Mossad Valley, you got Pentagon Valley down there, right? Otherwise known as Silicon Valley. So I guess my childhood antenna, this again, probably epigenetically from Okinawan ancestors, who are always being overrun, because, Okinawa is an island paradise. They're always being overrun and conquered and enslaved and fighting people with their bare hands to be independent. That's where karate comes from, by the way. Wushu comes from, because Okinawa was part of China back then. Wushu and Kobudo it's pronounced the same characters. So that's my epigenetic background. So I can relate to the Irish diaspora. I think we can, anybody who's alive right now, that your heritage is very similar. You're always being run over, conquered, enslaved, or some bad boys trying to do that, right? And that's what's happening right now in 2022. So you and me here in the live stream, and who's watching this on recording, we are so epigenetically equipped to handle whatever they throw at us, right? By the way, Kobudo and Wushu, the characters mean stop fighting. So you have to be strong, so no one's going to fight you. You stop the fight before it even starts. Anyway, I'm sorry for the Robin Williams dissociative moment there. So she talks about being in San Francisco, chasing, this is her phrase, chasing a love I didn't have. It's very poetic in certain passages. Chasing a love I didn't, and I assume that was Bronfman. And sure enough, they divorced, and there was an acrimonious custody battle with one of their children. There's a happy ending. She still has a good relationship with her first adoptive child, but then she was able to adopt two other children, rather, I say. And by the way, her immediate family, there was four children. She had a couple brothers and a sister. Pretty standard sized family for the 50s, I guess, the baby boom generation. And she herself is a family person and was able to have children. And that's one of the highlights of her adult experience, her adult life, from what I gather in the book. So anyway, let's leave Phil Bronfman. He, probably the settlement required an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and maybe her publisher, the lawyers said, "Hey, don't mention his name. He's going to sue us," or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I know the backstory. I'm giving you sharing with you the backstory of Phil Bronstein and why he's not in the book. And you can research that on your own if you are even interested. So anyway, I was going to talk about her health, various health challenges and those of her family, but I'm running out of time. Let's just say she's been through the ringer on that, not just the brain hemorrhage, but any number of other, not quite horrific, but almost so, her own challenges, as well as those of her sister, friends, family, mother, and her own father, who died of cancer. Really strong, strapping Irish American, hard working class dude who could do the swing shift. Just sort of, I think it was cancer. I mean, he might have been a lifelong smoker, but he just kind of shrunk down on his deathbed. But before he died, he called for his wife, Dot, or Dorothy. He called for his wife of 60 years. 60 years. He called for his wife and asked for a kiss before he slipped away. So that was, so man, these were strict, unemotional, or they didn't show it outwardly. And by the way, that's generational. My parents are the same way, and probably yours were too. No kissy, kissy, huggy, huggy type of behavior. That's very typical of that generation. I'm not saying it's good or bad. She used to get weapons. She talked, Sharon Stone, for whatever transgression, and I used to get weapons, ass weapons, right? And I can laugh about it. I didn't like it, what was going on. But anyway, um, I have to, let's get into the Dr. No connection here. And I want to address why I call this the fall of the compassion industry and why I refer to it in the globalist 3C, the celebrity charity circuit. Well, in reading the entire 007 series, about 12, 13 books, I'm about halfway through. This is about midpoint through the series by Ian Fleming, who was MI6, right? He's intelligent. The reason why I'm doing it is because I want to understand the psychology of MI6, of the intelligence agencies. I want to, not just MI6, but in general, how they approach, how they look at the world, how they look at people, how they look at certain nationalities. Dr. No, by the way, he's half German and half Chinese. What a great combination for a supervillain. His name's Justin. No, Dr. No. Anyway, the reason why I find this so relevant to the Sharon Stone role as a celebrity charity figurehead is that the premise of this book is that Dr. No's island, where, by the way, he's sealed it off, he has a bird guano. You know what bird droppings? They're good fertilizer, right? All the phosphates, nitrates. They used to be until their synthetic fertilizers took over. I think we should go back to guano. But he has this island, kind of like Epstein's Island, where he can shoot these radio frequency beams up to screw with satellites or any type of weaponry. This is in the late 50s by that time. So he's a security threat, but he's a freelancer. But his operation is being threatened by this elaborate, and he's got an incredible underground facility and tank and just these tunnels, which, by the way, the global national security state is all about tunnels and deep underground military bases, DUMBs for short, the operation. But he has one of these in the late 50s. But what is the spanner in the works? What really screws up his operation? It's the Audubon Society. The Audubon Society gets the U.S. and the British government involved because there's an endangered habitat of the spoonbill flamingo. I can't remember the exact, but it's a bird, right? At the Audubon Club. So what does Dr. No do? He goes and destroys the habitat of all the birds. But the takeaway point I'm getting from Ian Fleming, the MI6 dude, through the fiction, is that these charities are fronts for quasi-military intelligence operations, so they can go in and screw up even a criminal mastermind like Dr. No under the guise of protecting birds. Do you understand that? So this is what Sharon Stone is involved with. For one, she's involved with the AMFAR, and she mentions it in the book. It's an AIDS, HIV research organization. And if you just want to do a cursory search on your own, it's up to its neck in financial corruption. Even Harvey Weinstein makes an appearance there. He wanted to finance some sort of development of a play that he had developed through AMFAR. And that got Kenneth Cole not fired, but he willingly stepped down after being 14 years the head of AMFAR as the chair. Yes, that Kenneth Cole, the fashion dude. It's not just there's a person called Kenneth Cole who contracts. He's a merchandiser, really, but he contracts Chinese slave labor to make cheap crap goods that find their way at some outlet store, right? That's Kenneth Cole. I mean, any woman I know, I asked them about Kenneth Cole. They said their shoes are crap. They're like cardboard. I'm sorry if you have Kenneth Cole stuff, but it's not good quality. But so he has to make a living somehow. So he's the chair of and as we know through Kirby Summers' books, the whole retail industry, the fashion industry, like Leslie Wexner, right? Forever 21, Victoria's Secret, not Forever 21. I'm sorry, that's a Korean American family that founded it. Victoria's Secret. The retail is very much involved with all this. So Kenneth Cole was a head of AMFAR, and he was putting money through there with people like Harvey Weinstein. I'm just giving you one name that you would recognize immediately, and he was asked to step down. And so she kind of skirts around that around here. But again, it's the whole Dr. No strategy, that is anti-Dr. No strategy, using foundations and charitable organizations as funds to churn incredible amounts of money and resources based upon human misery of the people that they pretend to be protecting or advocating for. Sound familiar? Well, how about this name? Kenneth Cole, Harvey Weinstein. How about this name for you? Hillary Clinton. You know more than I do about the Clinton Foundation. You know about the Haiti, that woman from Haiti. What's her name? I can't remember. Laura Silsby, who was bringing in children from Haiti. And then she changed her name, of course. But under the guise of some sort of charitable front. I can't remember. I think she might have been working for, excuse me if I'm wrong, but it might have been under the auspices of the Clinton Foundation. So you get the point. And guess who Sharon Stone professes an admiration for in this book? Yes, you guessed it, Hillary Clinton. She's a big Hillary Clinton fan. I was waiting for mine. When is she going to start singing the praises of Oprah Winfrey? Another inhumanitarian, more like it. Right. So that takes up, we get the hard luck story, and I'm feeling kind of weepy and sad for all her hardships and her dirt poor family. They weren't dirt poor, but the old man had a job and was bringing in money, but not a lot of money to go around. And there's 4 kids, right? 4 growing children. So, I'm in a vulnerable emotional state. I want to believe Sharon Stone, but then the last quarter of the book is nothing about this, what I call liberal humanitarianism. It's nothing but the compassion industry over and over again. And she's name checking this celebrity and that celebrity and this organization, this and this particular film festival where she makes an appearance. All right. And remember, this is the woman who was in Total Recall, 1990, Paul Verhoeven. I like to find out about that. I think he's Dutch, right? There might be a Dutch psyops going on there somewhere. Total Recall, 1990, Basic Instinct, 92, Sliver, right? The book was written by one of my favorite. I'm really digging in Ira Levin, the guy who wrote Rosemary's Baby. He did a book, a novel. I have it now. And it was made into a movie called Sliver. And 1993, Casino, Martin Scorsese, 1995. Oh my gosh, she had a string of hits. So she, by the time she aged out of that, and she's honest about something, he's saying that she said, hey, if it hadn't been for Basic Instinct, I wouldn't be here today. And the whole scene. I'm not going to go. She talks about that incredible shot that heard around the world or seen around the world. So I don't want to spoil your fun. You read about it. It's not that interesting of a story, but read about it. And I was waiting for it too. And I said, is that it? Is that? By the way, she agreed to it. And she agreed to much more than that, and she doesn't really deny, or she doesn't take sort of a moral high ground on this at all. And she says, yeah, I'm an actor, and I'm about ready to. She's 32 years old when she was hired for Basic Instinct. So anyway, Michael Douglas didn't know that. Michael Douglas, that was her 18th film too. She had bit parts in many others, including a Woody Allen film. So she had pretty much was going out on her way out if it hadn't been for Basic Instinct. And by the way, that's when the security entities like to catch you when you're vulnerable, when your career is in the dumps. It's like it can go either way. You can either be uh, moved forward ahead, or you're going to fall back into the crab pot, right? That happened to me. That happened to They were watching me. They were saying, okay, have we put Hamamoto through the ringer enough that he softened us so that we can let him do our bidding for us? And I can see looking back on it now, I can see the pattern. So when I'm reading this book, even though we're in totally different professions, I can see the same grooming progress and the same progression being enacted. It's a formula. And if you read this book and you look back on your life, you here in the chat room or watching it on delay recorded on YouTube, you're going to see a very similar types of pattern there. And that, by the way, is part of what I call the higher justice movement, is that figuring out this on our own, not living up to judges, attorneys, police chiefs, detectives, all the specialists who are supposed to be apprehending and prosecuting and jailing and imprisoning the bad guys. We know, and the court system, the Supreme Court, all the way down. We can't depend on these institutions. So we have to do the detective work. We have to sniff it out. We have to do the creative, imaginative, Robin Williams, associative, disassociative type of work to draw these different parallels and to sniff out people who are being used to play us for fools at our, not just, I don't mind being a fool. I don't mind being a sucker, but I want to live to enjoy being fooled and being suckered. These people want to kill us. I'm not saying Sharon Stone specifically, but Amfar, come on. Is Amfar really looking for the cure to AIDS and HIV? Come on. Come on. I mean, did Jerry Lewis at the telethon really cure muscular dystrophy after all those years and those, I don't know how much money they were able to collect. And by the way, even Jerry Lewis was rolled up eventually. Remember that? Remember every year there was the Jerry Lewis, even the mighty Jerry Lewis tumbled down from the charity complex. And let that be a warning to all the people, the celebrities who are hanging on to a semblance of a career, that you too will be rolled up. So share with us your knowledge, share with us the information, even if it might be coded in these books. I can read between the lines. Sharon Stone has done us a really good service by sending out these coded messages that the professor of cultural forensics is able to decode because of his vast background in the popular culture, being steeped in it, plus having the analytical predisposition for this type of work. And you're helping me so much, you here in this chat room here, as well as the people in Patreon. I have material support, incredible material support, as well as intellectual support in this effort. So does Kirby Summers. So does Manny Grossman. So do a number of people that I won't even mention here, just for the sake of time. So this compassion industry, this vertically integrated compassion industry, the newspapers involved, San Francisco Chronicle, the cable television shows, all of the View with what's her, all these Joy Behar, whatever, these talk shows, or Harvey Levin, the journals of opinion, the magazines, Newsweek, and whatever it is. It's all vertically integrated compassion industry, the fashion people, Anna Wintour, whoever it is, they're doing a benefit for such and such and such. And again, don't get me wrong, I am not denigrating these debilities, the people who are suffering from them. That is not the point. I am calling BS on the people who are profiting from the vertically integrated compassion industry. And we, ordinary people, we normies, what we can do is withdraw our support of it and just say, we are not going to participate. We don't care about your celebrity culture. We're going to walk, and we're certainly not going to contribute a nickel for it. And if at a grassroots level, we can propose initiatives, that'll take a long while, but we can start doing initiatives to do away with these tax deductions and completely revamp the IRS code and take a second look, if not eliminate, the whole 501(c) process, which has become such a big loophole you can drive several trucks through it side by side. What was meant to help churches and truly charitable organizations staffed by nuns and people who are selfless and giving when it comes to tending to humanity, that's what that was originally for. Of course, the cynics were already planning how they were going to exploit it, right? But we know, we understand, it's the fall of the compassion industry, the fall of anything. The victory is only made possible by doing your intelligence work. And that's what we've done today, ladies and gentlemen. For the past 1 hour, I thank you very much for your rapt attention. I think I wrapped it up for the most part. There's some threads that I left hanging, but I made my point about the compassion industry. Use that phrase. Even using that phrase will make someone you're talking to ask, well, what do you mean compassion industry? And then you can just lay it out for them, right? You can educate them in a very quick fashion. Like, oh, yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I get it. There's a name for it. It's called the compassion industry. Oh, yeah, sure. We just made it up right now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your attention. I really do. And I'll be back with you, God willing, on Thursday. Yes, indeed. Let me give you a quick preview. I think I'm going to talk about, I was trying to do Mia Farrow. I wanted to talk about her autobiography that I read years ago, but then I got delivery of this book, Sharon Stone. I couldn't stop reading. So I said, and this is fresh. So new. So I said, I'm going to go with Sharon Stone. So Mia Farrow's story got pushed back, but I think I'm going to do it on Thursday, unless we have a surprise visitor. I don't know, but Mia Farrow's in the queue, let's say, and she's got incredible story, and you are going to be really bedazzled by the revelations that Mia Farrow herself is making in this book. What Falls Away is the title. Again, I'll end right there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening. Bye.